What's going on YouTube? It's Tej, back again with another video, and today coming at you with a Grade the Mock for Mel Kiper Jr. and Todd McShay's collaborative 3-round 2023 NFL mock draft. Hopefully you guys are excited to run through this 3-rounder. Hit that like button if you enjoy. Be sure to subscribe if you're new and looking for more football content in your life. And of course, leave me your thoughts down below. Do you think Mel and Todd did a good job drafting for your favorite squad? Who is your favorite team? And maybe what's your favorite pick that the two gave your favorite team? I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback for who went too high, who went too low, all down below in the comments section. So before we get started, I want to shout out our sponsor, BetUS. Links are down below in the description. Definitely check out their sign-up offers. And then also I wanted to note, we're going through 102 picks today, and I don't need this video to be too long. I'm sure that's not something you're necessarily looking for, like this 2-hour breakdown of 102 picks. So we're going to fly through these pretty quick, pick by pick, and basically it's going to be me telling you, do I like that add to the team, and then is that the spot in the draft where I think that person could go. So we start with the Carolina Panthers taking Bryce Young. This is the pick I would make. So I've talked about this plenty of times. I think that's the right move for Carolina. He's the best player on my big board. So talk about that this week as well. And then we get to CJ Stroud going 2. Yeah, his, agent could complicate this, but I do think Houston going quarterback at 2 is the right selection. Why wait till 12 to do it, or potentially, 33 to do it? I just assume, have a vote of confidence and take that guy at 2. But when I do my final mock draft, I may surprise people with who that quarterback is going to be at number 2 for Houston, but I do think their talk of a defensive player is a little bit of a smokescreen. Cardinals then take Will Anderson. Would love this fit. He's the best edge rusher to me in this class and second best non-quarterback in the class. So love this fit, and it gives Arizona an identity on that side of the ball. They lost Zach Allen, lost Byron Murphy. Who could be that cornerstone face of the defense? I think Will Anderson certainly has that potential. I think he can make that impact pretty quickly. Colts then take Anthony Richardson, so that's a little interesting. It's McShay making the pick. I know Kiper, I'm pretty sure he has Will Levis as his number 1 quarterback, maybe number 2 behind Bryce Young. So that's a little fun. But whether it's Levis or Richardson, I think you can make an argument that Shane Steichen's a great fit for either one of those potential, toolsy, traitsy, upside-based quarterback selections. So don't hate that whatsoever. And then Seattle taking Jalen Carter. Yeah, heard a lot of rumblings that they're keyed in on him. I think that comes with the caveat that I think they like Jalen Carter unless Will Anderson's on the board. And at that point, they would probably pivot and go Will Anderson at that point. But yeah, you pair up Jalen Carter plus Draymond Jones on the inside. That's headaches for days against interior offensive linemen. And I also think he's a really good run defender, so he shores up that part of the defense as well, which gave them fits last year. And then it's Tyree Wilson going to Detroit at 6. Yeah, it's really interesting. The one part of Aiden Hutchinson's prospect, profile and athleticism build kind of that wasn't like really good, because grade 3 cone, pretty good forward. Like size, weight, everything was there except for arm length. So then pair up Hutchinson with a guy on the other side that has this freaky Giannis Antetokounmpo-esque, wingspan. That's kind of a fun 1-2 punch. And then as good of a story James Houston was last year, you relegate him to a DPR role, which, for 6'1", 240-pound edge rusher, I think that's probably a good move. And then you got a really nice trio there on the edge. So don't hate that whatsoever. And also another team that could use that run defense reinforcements, and I think Wilson brings that to the table as well. Then Devin Witherspoon to the Raiders. Love his fit. Love his scheme versatility for Patrick Graham. I certainly think Witherspoon could go top 10. We actually get Gonzalez going pick number 8. So if this did play out, it would be 3 straight drafts where we've had consecutive corners go off the board. It was Horn and Surtain 2 years ago, and then last year obviously Derek Stingley Jr. and Sauce Gardner. So it'd be kind of cool to see that random trend kind of continue. But I think corner makes a ton of sense there for the Raiders, especially with the top 2 edge rushers off the board. They could go O-line, but I'd soon see them address that secondary. Nate Hobbs is good, but who else is really there? Then the Falcons take Christian Gonzalez. So don't hate this whatsoever either. You could tap into a deep corner class, maybe early round 2, but with Wilson and Anderson off the board, do you want to take Nolan Smith at 8? Do you want to take Lucas Van Ness? I could see them opting for the upside corner play here in Christian Gonzalez. And if all works out, Gonzalez is an awesome number 2 opposite of Terrell, and then Jeff Okudah is going to move inside the slot. And especially after the team released Casey Hayward, I do think corner is something that's still in play somewhere in the top, probably top 3 picks that Atlanta has this year's draft. Then we get to Chicago. Peter Skoronski. Yeah, to me, this should be Paris Johnson Jr., but nevertheless, we understand that offensive line is something that makes a lot of sense there for Chicago. 9 is kind of the spot where it feels like, first offensive lineman. It's about the area where I think that first lineman's coming off the board. Peter Skoronski is great on the move, so good fit for that zone blocking scheme, but I think you can make the same argument that Paris Johnson's a great fit, and he's not too far away from Skronsky in regards to being able to move or block on the move rather. And to me, he's just the best offensive lineman. I have no concerns about him playing tackle. So yeah, I'd move Paris over to right tackle, and he would be the pick there for me. Then the Eagles take Bijan Robinson. Would love to see this. I know McShay's had this in a couple of his mocks as well. I've had one of my subscribers kind of coin it as it's a luxury pick because this selection comes from New Orleans. So why not add a luxury piece to that offense? And, I don't know if Howie Roseman will do this unless, he's thinking about, hey, well, this is New Orleans pick, so let's have some fun here. And a backfield of Jalen Hurts plus Bijan Robinson is a really tough thing for DNs. That read option that, Philadelphia is going to run a lot. There's no win there for the D end. And also, Bijan's better than Rashad Penny. He's better than Kenneth Gainwell. He could be the lead guy in that committee. Big part in the receiving game, coming with power, elusiveness, speed. You name it, Bijan Robinson could do it. So it just adds one more dynamic and big-time playmaker to that offense. And then Will Levis falls to 11. Kiper doesn't waste any time, I'm sure, making this selection. Going to the Titans. This is one of the quarterbacks I think they could add that allows them to reset the position, but also allow them to move on from Ryan Tannehill. They could still start Tannehill and sit Levis for a year, but I would just assume, hey, let's go ahead and save that money, have it roll over to next year, and let's just see what Will Levis is all about. Clean up his footwork, and other than that, I think he's pretty much NFL ready. So with one offseason, I think you can clean his feet and then have him be your week one starter. So I love that pick there for Tennessee. And then long term, it gives you kind of that reset for the roster moving on from Tannehill. Then the Texans at 12 take Jackson Smith and Jigba. This would be awesome, pairing up C.J. Stroud with his college teammate JSN. You keep Robert Woods there on the outside where, post-injury, I'm a little concerned if he can really hold up there like he did with the Rams pre-injury. But nevertheless, they signed him for a reason, so maybe they think that he can. Him, Nico Collins out wide, but really the offensive focal point in the pass game would be Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think he can be that high-volume slot wide receiver, kind of like Cooper Kupp. So even adding Robert Woods, kind of a fun parallel between those offenses as well. And then you're just giving a safety blanket, and you're building on chemistry already laid with foundation laid by C.J. Stroud and Jackson Smith and Jigba, all that they did in college. Then we get to the Jets. Broderick Jones makes a ton of sense. I think he's a good fit for that zone blocking scheme. We've seen for the Jets at 13 and just about every grade the mock, this feels like the pick. Kalijah Kancey's kind of interesting here. Like one of those D tackles to pair up with Quinnen Williams could be fun. But you're making the trade for Aaron Rodgers. Apparently those trade talks are resuming now. So that'd be great, especially if it could come final mock, because I'd love to see what maybe if the Packers get pick 42, what I could do with them at 42 and 45. But that tangent aside, the Jets adding tackle makes all the sense in the world, gives you some more assurance that position's not going to be a problem while we still sort through what's DeBrain Brown, are they keeping Mekhi Becton, is Mac Mitchell, a starter, is he, a swing tackle, all that sort of stuff. But Broderick Jones just gives you more options there and more leeway. Patriots then take Paris Johnson Jr. I think this would be an absolute one. Again, my OT1, and then New England can fully start Paris Johnson Jr. at left tackle. You flip Trent Brown over to the right side, where I do think he's slightly better. And then Riley Reif playing for $5 billion this year. Not like you have to force him onto the field. He just becomes this experienced, solid swing tackle coming off an injury. And that's a good place to find yourself. But yeah, I think Paris Johnson Jr., with his mirroring ability, his footwork, and the athleticism plus the frame, this guy can be more than capable as a starting day one tackle, both in pass pro and in the run game. So big time add there for New England. Packers then take Dalton Kincaid. I just don't really think this is going to end up happening. I'd love to see Green Bay go pass catcher, JSN if he's available. Kincaid is a lot of fun. I think they're going to stick to their old ways of doing business. We'll add some pass catchers on day two, especially if they get that Jets pick. Like, I could see a world where at 42 and 45, they go like Josh Downs and then a tight end at 45, or like Darnell Washington and then a wide receiver at 45. That could be really fun, and I think that's something they are more likely to do versus taking a guy here in the top 15. But it is certainly fun to think about them taking a tight end with the highest upside as a receiver like Kincaid. Commanders then take Darnell Wright. So my question here would be, what are we doing with Andrew Wiley? Is he just going to be the swing tackle making $8 million a year? Are we moving, Wiley inside to guard and then moving Sam Cosmi, who's already shifting inside to guard? Is he moving all the way to left guard, as opposed to right guard? So this would, kind of complicate and give me some questions about that offensive line and who's fitting in where. But nonetheless, it is an area where they can get better. And maybe they think, hey, Darnell Wright had 2 years of playing left tackle, and then he flipped over to right tackle. We're going to ask him to flip back to play left, and he's going to be our replacement for Charles Leno. And I've even heard some say that Wright could play guard, so maybe they flip him over to the left side, build him up while he plays left guard, and then eventually becomes a Charles Leno replacement. So a lot of different ways this could break out. So it kind of gives me pause because what's the plan here? But that being said, I think the plan could shake out in a lot of different directions, which I don't hate. Steelers then take Zay Flowers. This is a weird, I don't want to say weird, but an interesting one. And I swear we just had a grade the mock the other day where the same thing happened. Personally, if they're going to go wide receiver, I think Addison makes more sense just because Addison plus Kenny Pickett, college teammates at Pitt. I think that if you're going to lean into chemistry just like the Stroud and Jackson Smith and Jigba selection earlier, lean into it. But nevertheless, Zay Flowers would be an interesting ad. Also, I think this might have been published before the Allen Robinson trade. Update. Yeah, they even put an update there with the Allen Robinson trade. So, yeah, I think wide receiver, especially round one, is taken off the board after, the Allen Robinson trade. But before that, not a terrible idea, but probably would have gone elsewhere. Lions then take Kalijah Kancey. So, this could be really fun. You get an edge rusher at 6, then an interior defensive, playmaker and a pass rush specialist and Kalijah Kancey. So you add one guy with insane length, then one guy whose profile, the weakness is his arm length at 3 percentile for Kancey. But you're just adding more and more juice across that front 7. Potential with Wilson plus the run stopping ability. Kancey's kind of the complete opposite. I think he's NFL ready. I kind of worry about maybe what the ceiling looks like. But I think day one he can hit the ground running. He's very explosive out of his stance. And you line him up against or next to Ali McNeil. Hopefully he can keep him clean and allow Kancey to focus on being just a pass rusher. Bucks with Lucas Van Ness. I don't hate this fit whatsoever. Inside-out versatility, so I kind of wonder what they're doing with tweener Logan Hall. Would he play inside? Would you move Van Ness out wide? But also I look at, Shaq Barrett. Is he a long-term, fixture? I don't know. I don't even know if he's going to be all that great next year, right? Because we're talking about a 30-plus-year-old edge rusher coming off a pretty big injury. Kind of the same hesitation I have about Von Miller in Buffalo. If one of those two guys is going to figure it out, I do feel better about Miller, which, again, bringing it back to Tampa Bay here, okay, Shaq Barrett might not be all that great next year. So, what's that long-term edge position looking like? I like Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. Pairing up with Lucas Van Ness gives you two really twitched-up athletes that also have a lot of strength in their profile. So that's a fun tandem. Seattle then takes Nolan Smith. So he falls down the board quite a bit. But you get Jalen Carter, you get Nolan Smith, you draft 2 Georgia Bulldogs, kind of a fun storyline. And Nolan Smith, high character, so maybe that kind of evens out some of the immaturity concerns some people would have about Jalen Carter. I could see an argument being made that that's true. But Smith, that explosive first step, I could see where he has those traits that Seattle covets. But that being said, I think they just need a little bit more mass, a little bit of a bigger frame there on the edge. I feel like adding Nolan Smith to Uchenna Nwosu and Boye Mafe, you're kind of just adding more of what you already have in place. But Nolan Smith could be a better version, no doubt. And then we get the Chargers taking Jordan Addison. If you saw my favorite offensive fits video, I love this selection. Inside-out versatility can start now, but also could be that Keenan Allen replacement. That's going to be a huge role for them to fill. And especially with Addison's route running prowess, but maybe not having the most insane 40, he does kind of even line up with some of the same stuff people were talking about with Keenan Allen when he came out. Then the Ravens take Emmanuel Forbes. This would be a fun one. A lot more zone coverage experience than he does man, but he's got the size and the arm length that says, well, this guy could be a man coverage corner. But with Mike McDonald taking over as the DC and playing more zone, maybe this selection would signal we're going to get even more of that. And Forbes has got a nose for the football. Same could kind of be said about Marlon Humphrey, so it'd be a fun addition there. And I could see them waiting to add maybe one more wide receiver or IDL with that 3rd round pick. Vikings then get Joey Porter Jr. That would be my one caveat here is I think Joey Porter Jr. should comfortably go ahead of Emmanuel Forbes. But nevertheless, Joey Porter Jr. is a perfect fit for that Brian Flores defense. Man press upside written all over him. And then you could play Porter Jr., Byron Murphy on the outside, let Caleb Evans and Andrew Booth Jr. fight it out there in the slot. And the Vikings secondary goes from a real problem spot at the beginning of the offseason to looking like I don't want to say a strength, but it's certainly not a weakness on paper. Jags then take Michael Mayer. Yeah, it sounds like they're going to get an extension done with Evan Ingram, so I don't know if this actually ends up happening. If they're going to draft tight end, I think it's going to be 3rd round or later. And this is a good tight end class, so could Zach Kuntz be in play here? I feel like I'm always talking about him as like a day 3 pick for someone. And he kind of has that same athletic profile that Evan Ingram has where it's, all athlete. There's so much upside to be played with. But maybe Brenton Strange is a different, skill set and could balance out what you have with Evan Ingram. So I just assume wait. I don't think they're going to do it at 24. Then the Giants take Deonte Banks, another fantastic scheme fit, man press upside, but variety of experience playing various zone coverages as well. But the real benefit here would be Deonte Banks, 4.35 speed, his size, his play strength, having to be a press corner opposite of Dory Jackson and giving Wink Martindale that extra corner that he needs to run that defense. Cowboys, Quentin Johnston. This is a fun one to think about. I don't think they'll ultimately do it because, where would QJ even slot in here? He'd be behind CeeDee Lamb, he'd be behind Brandon Cooks, and then it's like Jalen Tolbert, if you think he can get better. Michael Gallup, they're paying $12+ million a year to. Wide receiver 5 with a 26 overall pick, I think they'll go elsewhere. Mayer off the board kind of stalls this out a little bit, but whether it's Bijan or Mayer, I think they'll get one of those guys that their position value, despite how good those players are, is going to push them down the board. And I think Dallas would be benefited from that. Bills take Trenton Simpson, opportunity to try to replace Tremaine Edmonds. I think Jack Campbell has more of the size and the ability to become an impact player in the run. Not that I think Simpson's bad against the run and he can't, eat blocks, but 230 versus 245, naturally, that's just going to play a factor in it. So I could see them going Jack Campbell, better athlete than we thought. But I could also see them being like, yeah, the guy that runs 4.43 at 6'2", 230. Yeah, that's normal NFL linebacker size. 230 is kind of the new 240, and he's a freak athlete, and he even did some stuff in the nickel, so we can kind of move him across the field. So could see the Bills opting in that direction. Plus Simpson, plus Matt Milano. That's a high upside type of coverage unit there in the middle of the field, especially in a team that plays a whole lot of zone. Julius Brent sneaks in the first round. Todd McShay, you have my respect. Team Julius Brent's here, all in favor of him going round 1. And for a team that's going to mix up their man-zone coverage splits, kind of drive by drive, game by game, week by week, I think Brent is a good addition because we saw him leave Iowa, which is zone heavy, go to K-State where they mix it up, not quite even, but a little closer to even than Iowa. And we saw him more than hold his own. But when Cincinnati does, play Kansas City and they rush 3 and then play cover 4 behind it, drop 8 into coverage, 6'3" with a 6'6" 3 cone and 34-inch arms, that's going to play. And that's going to be a huge addition to that secondary. Chidobe Awuzie last year of his contract. Mike Hilton, same thing. And I almost think Julius Brents has a little bit of safety upside too. So I wonder how Lou Anarumo would utilize Brents and if he's being moved around the field too. There could be some upside to be tapped into there as well. Brian Brzee to the Saints, love this. It makes a lot of sense to be a David Onyemata replacement. Upside guy that missed a lot of time, played so many different positions that I don't know if he really got to mine into what his potential is. But New Orleans is a pretty good place to go and develop players. They have a good track record of being able to draft and develop. Not always, but I think their reputation speaks for themselves, and I'd love to see them get their hands on, former number 1 overall recruit, 5-star player coming out of high school, and Brian Brzee, who you see flashes of it, and 6'5", 300+ pounds, the athletic ability. Yeah, there's just a lot of upside to mine there. Then the Eagles take Myles Murphy, so back-to-back Clemson players. I think this also makes a lot of sense. I think he can win with power pretty much right away. Has a gaudy frame, good athleticism, so I think he should still be in this first-round conversation. He fell from grace as being this guy who was, almost every mock you read, he was somewhere there in the top 10. Now he's like sneaking into the first round. And I think really he should go mid to late first just because the upside is there. But he also has the capability of producing right away. Pass rush wise, it's with his power, and then I think he's a high floor player from a run defense standpoint. So to get him at 30, I mean, this is a guy that could play on early downs for Philadelphia and then kind of buy himself some time to grow as a pass rusher and then work his way into that rotation with some time as well. Chiefs then take Will McDonald. Would love this pick. Good combination of bend, speed, and arm length, and rotation of Karlaftis, Amenahue, and McDonald. That's pretty awesome to me. Steelers take Brian Branch. I think Branch should easily be a first rounder. He's top 10 on my big board, so I think this would be an absolute steal of a value pick. And then Pittsburgh gets a great Mike Hilton replacement, and someone that they really haven't replaced just yet. I think you use Branch as a blitzer just like the Steelers did with Hilton, but you're also getting a sure tackler and a guy who can do a lot of different things with a variety of coverages. So would love that pick as a Steelers fan. Texans then take Keon White. He got that invite to the first round, so I feel like he's going to go earlier than some people are expecting. And even in my final mock, I've already kind of mapped it out. He is not going to be a first rounder, so that's a little bit of what I would do, maybe kind of clouding up my judgment. But nevertheless, don't rule out him going top 40. And Houston, I could see being like, hey, this guy has the 6'5", 280-pound frame. Also really good athlete, smooth mover, and he's starting to figure it out. Year over year, you see the progress being made. I would make the argument that starting from ground zero to building up to where he is now, there was a lot of room to grow, and you could expect that to happen pretty quick. It's like if you're, let's just say, 350 pounds and trying to shed that weight versus being 175 pounds and trying to shed weight, it's a lot easier to do that, quote unquote, easier to do that when you have more weight to lose. So I think with more ground to gain, Keon White has been able to do that, but can he take that next step? pairing him up with D'Amico Ryans does give me some hope that maybe he could. Cardinals take TJ Turner. Man, when you run a 6.28 3 cone and a 4.26 640, you're going to go early. Yeah, I even had to move him up in my final mock because athletes go high. I think DJ Turner has been able to overcome some of maybe the concerns about his shorter height and slider build and just become a good football player. I can play in a variety of defenses, defensive schemes, and is a twitched up athlete. So yeah, I don't rule out top 34 for Turner at all. Colts then take Osiris Torrance. This would be perfect. Will Fries is the, kind of glaring weak spot on that O-line in my opinion. And Osiris Torrance, right guard at Florida, plug and play, replace Will Fries as the right guard for Indianapolis. So I would love that pick for Indy. And I think the Rams would be able to benefit from it too if he made it one pick further. But nonetheless, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, this team needs edge. Felix Anudike-Uzomah, I think, could be an impact player right away. I worry about him as a run defender day one, but that type of bend, that type of explosiveness off the line, 6'3", 255, I think good frame for him, and I think could make some impact in the pass rush side pretty much right away for Los Angeles, and they will need it. Seahawks then take Hendon Hooker at 37. So it's always fun to think about where Hooker's going to go. Could he be that eventual Geno Smith replacement? It's plausible. And Geno's money is guaranteed for this calendar year. So it's not even like 2 seasons and it's like the NFL calendar. No. It's like the true January to January calendar year. So what does that mean for Geno beyond this year? I don't know. And, I could see Seattle saying, in 2 years' time, we need to have that replacement. Or, after this upcoming season's time, I should say, we need to have that replacement. And if Hooker's there at 37, I think they're going to have talks about it. I think the Raiders could have similar conversations as well. They take Steve Avila instead. Would love this guard center flexibility. So whether it's him or Parham playing left guard center and then the other person playing that other spot, fantastic. And then you're just figuring out that right side, which I don't think that's too bad either. You could also keep Andre James at center. Avila plays left guard. You move Parham over to right guard, and then Jermaine Illuminor at right tackle. Makes that offensive line fall into place pretty well. Panthers then take Jalen Hyatt. I've had some conversations with people, and I always, forget to mention DJ Chark. And it's nothing against the player because I like DJ Chark, but a 1-year deal for a guy who's oft injured, it's hard to factor him into the long-term equation for this team. So whether it's Jalen Hyatt or Tank Dell, I would love that pick. And I've also heard that there's some love for Jonathan Mingo in that Carolina, front office. So wide receiver here at 39, I think makes a lot of sense. And, Mingo gives you a more diverse skill set versus Hyatt, Tank Dell. I think you do more over the top with those guys. So, pick your poison. Saints taking Luke Musgrave. Yeah, this comes down to how you feel about Juwan Johnson, but Johnson kind of wins with his size and not much of his athleticism. He's just kind of this big lumbering guy, but the athletic traits aren't really anything special. Musgrave is 6'6", 250 and has plus level athleticism. Maybe not off the charts athlete, but a plus level athlete, no doubt. So I could see this being your Johnson replacement if he doesn't, pick up with the 7 touchdowns he had last year and kind of continue that growth. But also I think you could run some 2 tight end sets and, make it that much easier for Alvin Kamara in the run game and create some mismatches against linebackers and safeties. So worst comes to worst, Johnson's good and Luke Musgrave is good. And you have 2 dynamic tight ends, which is not a bad thing to have. Titans take Darnell Washington. This is not a pick I put in any of my mocks, but does it make a lot of sense? I think it does. I like Chigakonkwo from Maryland last year, and I think the more opportunities they gave him, the more targets he got, the more he showed that he can be that team's #1 tight end. So I'd rather see Chig just get more work. But, for a team that's, ground and pound identity, we'll see. I mean, Derrick Henry apparently might be traded. We'll see. If they keep King Henry, then, adding a tight end with Washington with his blocking prowess, I think makes a lot of sense and maybe a little off the wall and something we haven't mocked yet. But at the same time, I get where the logic takes that pick. Jets select Joe Tippmann. It sounds like Ben Jones is their guy, so I've kind of stopped considering center as a need right now for the Jets. Now, if that deal falls through, maybe I'll kind of reconsider. But in the event they sign Ben Jones, I think they will go elsewhere. And then Adetomiwa Adebawore. Dang it. I don't want to spoil anything for my final mock, but I thought I might be able to get ahead of this before anybody else. But you pair up with one of my subscribers calling him the Alphabet. I think I'm just going to call him the Alphabet here. The Alphabet plus Quinn Williams. I am really intrigued by what the upside of that interior duo looks like. And you lose Sheldon Rankins. I don't know if Adebawore is going to be that type of run defender right away. Really, you're making this selection because he's 280 pounds, 4'4", 940, and long arms. So you're really kind of looking at this from a pass rush upside. But I do think he plays with the power needed to become a good run defender with some time. So I think this would be an awesome way of trying to replace Sheldon Rankins and a ton of upside there from the pass rush standpoint. Williams next to the Alphabet. That'd be really fun to think about. Falcons take Jonathan Mingo. Yep, this is a guy that just continues to rise steadily up boards. Every mock, it feels like I find Jonathan Mingo going earlier and earlier. And I understand why. Production may not, kind of jump off the charts, but I think when you watch the film, he's got the route running to win at all three levels. He's got this interesting blend of being a yak guy, but also someone who can win deep down the field. And as an intermediate threat at 6'1.5", 4.45 speed, good weight to go with it, can box out defenders. He's got this well-rounded skill set, but we never really got to see it fully, production-wise, and you didn't get to see the receptions that kind of back all of it up. So you got to watch the one-on-ones and see how he's positioned himself against corners. But the more I watch of Jonathan Mingo, the more I like. So I totally get why he is climbing up boards. Packers take B.J. Ojulari. Yeah, I hear a lot of feedback when I take Nolan Smith and give him to Green Bay in the first, and a lot of people are like, well, he's a little lighter than what they normally like, and I get that. Well, if Nolan Smith, 235 that I think easily could blow up 240, B.J. Ojulari is probably in that same camp, and he's a guy that would definitely need to bulk up to kind of fit their image, and maybe they think they can be the team to get him there, but I could see that giving them pause and some hesitation here and wanting to go elsewhere. But nevertheless, get a polished pass rusher for a team that is looking to replace Preston Smith in a year's time. I think Ojulari could be that guy. And from a pass rush standpoint, not much work needs to be done. So you can basically give him a year to just bulk up, gain strength, and eventually step in that role currently occupied by Preston Smith. So I don't hate it, but I don't know if he's necessarily their type of edge rusher. Pats take Tyreek Stevenson. Yeah, this man press 246 specialist here. Makes a lot of sense for Bill Belichick in that defense. I think he's a high floor guy. I do kind of worry about where the ceiling's at with Tyreek Stevenson, but we also saw in college he played the nickel at Georgia. He played out wide at Miami, so you get some inside-out flexibility there for New England. I think Marcus Jones should be their slot wide receiver, but in the case that they like Jonathan Jones and Jack Jones on the outside, you could also move Stevenson to the slot. Commanders take Keely Ringo. Yeah, a name that's kind of fallen from grace at once upon a time. He was top 10 in every mock draft you read, 6, 7, 8 months ago. Now kind of seen by a lot as a late 1 to, mid 2 kind of guy, maybe even late round 2. But for Washington, I do think they need one more corner. And I could see them, instead of taking a corner at 16, saying, hey, there's depth. We'll go offensive line like we saw in this mock, patch that up a little bit more, and then we'll address corner at 47. And if they think Ringo's that guy for that cover 3 heavy defense, okay, I can trust it. They played more zone last year at Georgia, and I think Ringo's play kind of declined because of it. So I'd rather see him go in a man press heavy scheme. But that being said, maybe this could work. The lateral movement kind of gives me pause here, so maybe I'd go with a different corner for Washington. Lions take Jahmyr Gibbs. Yeah, I think a 1-2 punch of Gibbs plus Montgomery makes a lot of sense. And then you could trade DeAndre Swift right after this pick's made. I don't think you're getting a third rounder for him, but I think if you told a team we'll take a 2024 third rounder and basically just kind of take that trade and put it into a high yield savings accounts for a year, and then you turn the calendar and it's like, oh, man, it's April, and I forgot the Lions have an extra top 100 pick from DeAndre Swift. Thank you, DeAndre Swift. That's pretty awesome. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think Jahmyr Gibbs is that exact same player, but maybe just a little bit better. And even if he's not better, I think you can just trust Gibbs to stay healthy a little bit more than you can with Swift right now. Steelers take Anton Harrison. This would be a dream come true for someone who has Anton Harrison as a top 3 offensive tackle in this year's class and is a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. So I don't think Anton Harrison makes it this far. He may not have the same strength and insane, that strength profile like a DeJuan Jones or Broderick Jones has. But nevertheless, that type of pass pro polish, teams are going to covet that. So honestly, I could see the Rams saying hey, Joe Noteboom didn't work out. We're not going to sit with that mistake. Anton Harrison's the pick at 36. I could see that. And I could see him going round 1. I think there's a lot of suitors that make a lot of sense. A trade down from Tampa Bay, he could be their guy. But if he makes it to 49 to Pittsburgh, I will be over the moon. Then the Bucs take DeJuan Jones. So they go edge round 1, then followed up with offensive line. Jones plays right tackle. You move Wirfs over to left tackle, and you might have the strongest tackle tandem in the NFL. My God. But my concern here is what does DeJuan Jones look like against speedy, bendy edge rushers that can get underneath his 6'8" frame? He also doesn't have the quickest footwork. And then I'd like to see him go to a team that has a mobile quarterback where you have to kind of rush contain, and it buys DeJuan Jones a little bit of time to lock in on you and get his hands on you where you're going to be taken out of the play. Right now, Tampa Bay does not have that guy. Now, we'll see after 2024. I think Drake May's a good athlete. I think Caleb Williams could use his legs. They're not quite Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson. But with their ability to kind of move, I could see that eventually leading to teams having to rush contain in big spots and passing down, stuff like that, and DeJuan Jones benefits from it. But we are talking about a projection in 2024 and beyond then. Dolphins take Brenton Strange. So, speak of the devil, and he will appear. I mentioned Strange earlier as a potential, day 3 guy. I could see him going early 4. He could go earlier than this. Not a whole lot of production, but kind of like Mingo, where it's just like you watch what he does, and it's like, man, this guy's a good football player. He just didn't get the ball enough. So something between him and Clifford, I guess those two maybe just, I don't know, chemistry one there, or the plays were designed to go elsewhere. I mean, there's an infinite amount of possibilities to why he didn't have the numbers that would make him an easy kind of top 60-ish type of tight end. Also, it's a good tight end class, so it's always hard to project where these guys are going to start coming off the board. But I do like Strange. I kind of worry about maybe the movement skills versus some of the other guys. And I know Sam Laporta's on the board here. I think I'd opt for Laporta and what he could look like as a blocker in this blocking scheme in Miami versus Brenton Strange. Seahawks take Jaden Reed. Yep, I've mocked this. More often than not, it's in the 3rd round at pick 83. But, don't rely on wide receiver on round 2, whether it's Josh Downs, Jaden Reed, Tank Dell. I think there's a lot of different avenues in which Seattle can explore to find that 3rd pass catcher at the wide receiver position, find an eventual Tyler Lockett replacement. So you have a good trio for now, but you also set up yourself to have a good duo long-term for Geno Smith and whoever that future quarterback is, which in this case, they took Hendon Hooker at 37. So it'd be to boost up Hooker long-term. Bears take Mozzie Smith. This would be an awesome, kind of a falling star. I feel like Mozzie with his stock, kind of like Mingo, where it's just steadily up and up and up and up, and he could go late 1 because of it. That or early 2, and I do think he ultimately goes early 2. So if he makes it at 53, I think this is kind of a sprint the pick in. Would love to see him in that Chicago defense. Especially in a 4-man front. There's some people who already like Mozzie Smith as a 3-tech versus a nose, but in this 4-3 defense, he'd be playing that 3-tech, somewhere between the 2-eye and the 3, I guess. And you're already getting a pretty good run defender right away, as long as the effort's there. Sometimes he's a little inconsistent, but because of the athleticism and, there's games where you see the pass rush potential flash. If they can iron that out and get it week in and week out, he could be that 3-tech that Matt Eberflus needs in that defense, Chargers take Keanu Benton. This is the also benefited of Mozzie Smith falling. Benton does as well, and he would be such an awesome addition for the Chargers. He plays bigger than 311, in my opinion. Really good run defender, and I think plus level pass rusher right away. I think he gets a little overlooked in a lot of ways, that spot. And whether he's playing nose or 3-4 D end, wherever LA lines him up, getting that additional reinforcements in the run game allows you to play more of those 2-high looks, but also you find a 3rd pass rusher here with behind, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack. They'll do it from the edge. Morgan Fox, Keanu Benton. I think those guys can get it done from the inside. Lions take Drew Sanders. This would be interesting. Kind of feels like Derek Barnes overlap here with a linebacker whose best skill set is being a blitzer. But there is upside to mine there. 5-star recruit, goes to Alabama. We got to see a little bit more of his coverage feel and saw the athleticism and how it plays over the middle. I do think there's more room for him to grow. And also think he can get better, against the run, filling lanes and shoring up his tackling. But the guy can fly around the field. The athleticism, you see it right away. And then you throw in what you're going to get right away as a high-level blitzer. It's just one more extra asset in the front 7 to make that pass rush that much more juiced for the Lions. Jags take Riley Moss. I think it's a little rich for Moss, but I think my other hesitation here is I'd rather see them draft a nickel corner like a Quan Martin, another hot name right now, and that way you keep Darius Williams on the outside. That said, Darius Williams also only has 2 years left on his deal, so finding that Williams replacement could be done this offseason, could be done next offseason. But, Moss, in a defense where we saw Tyson Campbell really step up as this man coverage, upside, budding superstar, I don't know if Moss is really a fit for that. The Giants then take John Michael Schmitz. This would also be an absolute steal. I mean, we're talking about the Giants potentially taking him at 25, let alone, getting the chance to make that selection at 57, which would be a win of all wins. So would love to see this play out for the Giants and kind of finish up that offensive line overhaul. It's taken 3 years worth of time, and center's kind of that last missing spot. Cowboys get Sam Laporta, solid blocker, good athlete, good after the catch as well. And this could be a good way to kind of replace Dalton Schultz. I know you got Ferguson, Hendershot there, but you could aim for, a higher ceiling, and Laporta could present that. And worst comes to worst, he's just an eventual replacement for one of those 2 guys who have, less than 4 years on their deal, which when you draft Laporta, you got him for 4+ years, or 4 years minimum. Then we get the Bills taking Josh Downs. This would be really fun. I mean, him and Khalil Shakir, again, kind of feels like a skill set overlap. But Shakir was a 5th rounder, so you're not attached to him. And if you feel like Downs is just Shakir but better, then don't hold back. don't just because you took Shakir in day 3 last year, don't let that prevent you from getting better when you need another guy to help take workload off the shoulder of Jordan Addison. And Downs gets open, especially underneath. Also, really good yak weapon. So you can do some different things in that offense. And again, try to take some of the workload off the shoulders of Stephon Diggs. Matt Bergeron to Bengals. This is a fun one, and kind of the same thing I talk about with the Jags when I mock the Matt Bergeron, where he could play right tackle if problems arise. The Jags, it's Walker Little. For Cincinnati, it's Lyle Collins. Or he plays left guard, and he's an upgrade over Ben Bartch in Jacksonville, or he's an upgrade over Cordell Volson or Jackson Carman, whoever ends up currently winning that job for Cincinnati at left guard. So I like the 2-position flexibility that Bergeron gives you here. I think he can be a competent starter at both, and maybe even a plus level interior offensive lineman. I'm kind of coming around to that thinking. I do worry though about D tackles getting into his chest, because that's when he kind of folds like a house of cards. Bears then take Derek Hall. Yeah, he's a little stiff as an edge rusher, and he stands everything upright. It's a little interesting, but he's still really explosive and has some solid arm length, like 82nd percentile. It's one of those things, one of those traits and numbers that's kind of got lost in the mix. But he's not just fast and bendy; he's got that arm length to go with it. So an interesting skill set, and for a D-line that desperately needs edge, I like the value of Hall there at 61. Then the Eagles take Zach Pickens. Yeah, Pickens is not a bad player, and I feel like he's a guy that I haven't talked about enough. Explosive. I think there's a lot of pass rush upside, so I like this fit pairing him up with, and this is going to be a fit that unfortunately I've been again sniped, I think by McShay both times, sadly, with these interior defensive linemen with my mock for Wednesday. But nevertheless, Pickens and his upside as an explosive pass rusher next to Jordan Davis, who I think has upside as a pass rusher, but you make that pick because he's a high-level run defender and he's going to eat space, eat blocks. So I think on paper that symbiotic relationship makes a whole lot of sense, and that's a step in the right direction, trying to replace Javon Hargrave and then eventually Fletcher Cox. Chiefs then take Marvin Mims. Inside-out versatility. In my perfect world, I have Kadarius Toney playing in the slot. So let's say Marvin Mims plays outside, brings that 4.38 speed to the table, and gives you that over-the-top weapon that you have MVS, who's a burner, and Toney and Sky Moore as well. But just forcing defenses to still respect that over-the-top speed that may not be Tyreek Hill level, but because of that, there's so much open underneath. And I think Mims is a good underneath route runner. I actually think he's just solid working over the middle of the field. But he just doesn't have the frame that's going to box out DBs or anything like that. So I think one more speed threat, open up the middle of the field that much more, and make this offense that much more predicated on yak because of it. Bears then take Cam Smith. Man, what a fall for Cam Smith. First pick of round 3. That would really surprise me. I still think Cam Smith should be in consideration for late round 1. I think he's solid across the board with plus level ball skills. So yeah, I think this is a absolute steal there for the Bears. Pair him up with Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon. That's a good trio there in the cornerback room. Jack Campbell, another faller. Second pick of the 3rd round. Now, him going to Houston, I can get behind that. Any linebacker that Houston takes this year, I'm going to be optimistic about them just because D'Amico Ryans is there. Is that fair? Maybe, maybe not. But Campbell with better athleticism than we thought, already a really good college player, high-level tackler, can read and react. I think that 3-cone in the 95th percentile, you see it on film. Pair him up with D'Amico Ryans, good things could follow. Arizona then takes Cedric Tillman. Yeah, this feels like a really good DeAndre Hopkins replacement, assuming this trade is imminent. A guy who can do a lot of the same things, work the intermediate parts, work the hashes, really just live in that 10 to 20 yard range at various points of the field, and then be that contested catch, possession X type. So Tillman's been a big riser of late. I think that fit in Arizona makes a ton of sense. Broncos Byron Young. So, it's good to see I'm not the only one struggling to get Byron Young going before round 3. But I think he's an older prospect that is a good athlete, but doesn't always show up on tape. So I prefer him in round 3 and kind of seeing what a team can mine him and his potential into. And for Denver, I don't know if edge is really a huge need, but at the same time, you can never have too much of a rotation there, so don't hate it whatsoever. And then Tajay Spears. Man, okay, this could be a fun ad. Him plus Javonte Williams, who is coming off injury, so you got to have to find that replacement anyways. But they also signed Shamaje Perine, who I think looked pretty good last year in Cincy. So however that committee shakes out, it's not a bad thing to add one more running back. And also Sean Payton loves having a 3-man committee, where most teams kind of have 2. Sean Payton has always wanted to have 3, so I wouldn't doubt this pick whatsoever. Rams take Quan Martin. This is a fun ad. I would think they might move him to safety, but he could also play nickel corner. So I kind of look at this as potential free safety, get that difference maker that, they lost a ton of safeties this year. So it's a void on that side of the ball. But he also could be an upgrade there in the slot where they definitely stand to get better. Raiders take Tucker Kraft. Yeah, they have a couple tight ends on 1-year deals. O.J. Howard and the other name is escaping me at the moment, but nonetheless, not long-term fixtures at the moment on that roster. And Tucker Kraft could kind of sit for a year. Tight ends tend to be a little bit slow to start, and especially a guy coming from South Dakota State, I could see that being true. So you kind of have him play behind those veterans, kind of learn his craft, learn from those guys, and then you hope that the athleticism shows. Then it's not just this guy picking on small school competition, and hopefully that it sticks to the NFL level. And then Josh McDaniels has that difference maker at tight end that if he can get it, he wants to add it. A.T. Perry then to the Saints. Fun. Size, speed threat, and just kind of a different type of wide receiver. He's almost kind of a blend of what you wish you could combine with Chris Olave and Michael Thomas, where he's got the frame and the over-the-middle kind of receiving ability and upside, and he runs a mean slant, kind of like Michael Thomas, but also the ability to be an over-the-top threat and get behind DBs like Chris Olave. So he's almost like those two wide receivers kind of morphed into one. Close, but not quite exactly 1-to-1 there. But adding a third wide receiver is I think a good add to the Saints team. I've been trying to find a slot wide receiver and someone with yak ability because I also think that's a skill set they're missing right now. But, if they draft Perry, is he playing in the slot? Are they moving Olave to the slot? Would it be Michael Tom? That would be my one question here is who's playing on the inside out of that trio? Titans then take Cody Mauch. I think this pick makes a ton of sense. I think Mauch goes before this, but nobody's really talking about center as a need for the Titans. And I'm like, Aaron Brewer, I'm sorry. 6 foot, 275. We've seen it. It doesn't play. Cody Mauch feels like a Tennessee tight, great run blocker, kind of feels like he fits with their identity and what they want their strength to be on that side of the ball. And ultimately, his best position might be center. So I could totally see Tennessee drafting him probably in the second round versus here at 72. But if he did make it to 72, I think you sprint the card and you get your Aaron Brewer replacement. Texas take Jaquelin Roy. Yeah, I've had a hard time kind of squeezing him into the top 100 of my mocks, but I don't rule it out whatsoever. Pretty good run defender, and he's a solid pass rusher. He just doesn't take games over like I thought he might. Preseason, he was way too early, top 3 IDL for me. I really bought in the upside, and he really just was kind of a fine player, pretty good, did a lot of things well, but nothing great. But that being said, just find some consistency over, Ray Lopez and Malik Collins, and maybe get a little younger at the position, and maybe you can mine that upside that I thought was there at the NFL level, but also I just think you can do better than, Collins and Lopez. Browns then take Gervon Dexter. This is a fun one to pair him up with Dalvin Tomlinson, two freakishly huge human beings. Dexter stopped the run well, played a lot of B gap there at Florida. I think best case scenario, he's like 3-4 DN. I think that would be like my perfect world to drop Gervon Dexter into. But 4-3 D tackle where he's again playing kind of 2-eye to 3 tech, not an impossible adjustment for him to make. And then if the pass rush upside, if they can kind of tap into that, he's well worth the risk here at 74. This kind of Gervon Dexter is the ultimate kind of where's your risk appetite at? Do you want to take this selection? And, how early is too early? But nonetheless, Dexter plus Tomlinson, two massive human beings, I think should stop the run well, which the Browns desperately need. But then also the upside of him being as a pass rusher and anybody who can step up and take work off the shoulder of Myles Garrett, I'm all for if I'm a Browns fan. Falcons take Yasir Abdullah. Yeah, outside linebacker, and also know some people like him as an inside linebacker. So they got Caden Ellis, who's kind of this tweener linebacker. Could they pair him up with Abdullah? I think they could. Definitely an explosive athlete, and would kind of be a fun fit here, somewhere here in the top 75. And I do think linebacker is a spot where Atlanta certainly could get better. Patriots then take Rashee Rice, get a kind of a physical, box out, contested catch guy, but not the size of Cedric Tillman or Michael Wilson, which if you're going to draft that guy, I'd just assume draft Michael Wilson here, but he also comes with more injury concerns, so pick your poison. Rice just does not play as big. He wants to play like Tillman, but he's not as big as Tillman, and that kind of worries me at the NFL level. And he's always wanting contact, and sometimes I just want him to kind of shed a defender and understand he's beat that guy, so he doesn't need to bring him back into the play. But could be eventual Devontae Parker replacement. I think their skill sets kind of overlap here, but you're going to have to eventually move on from Parker anyway. Rice could certainly be the avenue to do that. Rams, Zach Charbonnet. Okay, not the type of running back I normally associate with a Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan-esque, rushing attack, and almost kind of feels like Trey Sermon when the 49ers drafted him a couple years ago, like a more in kind of an offense that runs more power versus, zone blocking stuff, but this still not a terrible idea. And for an explosive passing attack, just to have the sure thing of this guy who is kind of a bowling ball running back, faster than people want to give him credit for. But every time you hand it off, you feel good about picking up 4 to 5 yards at a time and just keep in progress moving forward. I don't hate that ad whatsoever, and it's not one I've seen in any mock, so I do give who made that pick, Kiper. I give Kiper some credit there. Packers take Michael Wilson. all right, I'm intrigued. I would assume you move Romeo Doubs into the slot, and then it's Watson plus Wilson on the outside, and then Doubs, kind of this shifty route running assassin in the slot. Don't hate it whatsoever. The concern for Wilson is he going to stay healthy. I like him a ton from a player standpoint and what we got to see at the Senior Bowl, but I understand if you can't stand what might be there with his injuries and the time he might miss, I understand why he might fall down boards because of that. Darius Rush to the Colts. In my upcoming mock, I'm not going to give the Colts a corner, and that's solely just because I think they're going to sign Casey Hayward. He's been released by the Falcons. He spent like 80% of his career playing under Gus Bradley, who was the Colts DC, still running that cover 3 defense where Hayward's had his best year. So I think that is kind of the direction I'm heading in. But this was obviously released before that, releasing of Casey Hayward was announced. So I don't hate Darius Rush. I actually think he'd be a great fit in that defense. And I'm a big Darius Rush fan. And I'm trying to find a way to kind of shrink the margin between him and Cam Smith in my upcoming mock because, honestly, I think those guys should be going a lot closer to one another than people are talking about right now. Steelers get Diane Henley. Him plus Cole Holcomb kind of feels like it creates a light linebacker duo just in regards to weight. Diane Henley could also struggle because once he gets blocked, he's kind of neutralized out of plays. But he does have a good knack for being able to shoot gaps because he's such a twitched up, freaky athlete. And you're really making this selection for the coverage upside. And especially if Pittsburgh is pivoting to maybe playing more zone, which you signed Pat Peterson, you're telling me you're going to run more zone. Henley could become a really good fit in that kind of over-the-middle coverage threat paired up with Holcomb that the Steelers really need right now. And then the Lions take Luke Schoonmaker. So we're getting some different tight ends here. Schoonmaker's another guy where I think he does a lot of different things well. May not be the most vertically based, gonna be able to run that seam and potentially catch and run for a huge chunk play. But I think he does everything else really, really well. Good blocker, can work the underneath stuff, and just be a middle of the field kind of 10 to 15 yard threat and a safety blanket for our quarterback. So don't hate that whatsoever. And the Lions could stand to get better there. I know Brock Wright, was fine last year, but I think part of the reason they moved on from Hockenson wasn't because they don't value it, which maybe they don't, but also they just didn't want to pay Hockenson. Here you're just talking about drafting a guy and having him on a 3rd round, 81st overall type of selection contract for a tight end, which is minimal. Then the Bucs take Sidney Brown. So yeah, Brown's another guy where I feel myself kind of having him fall down boards, and same thing plays out here. He goes to Tampa. You got Ryan Neal, but only on a 1-year deal. And maybe you move Antoine Winfield into the slot and have him be close to the line of scrimmage, and ideally then closer to the ball, making more plays. And then it's Neal playing over the top. Brown is the downhill box safety. I like that 1-2 punch. The only downside to Brown is that he could definitely clean up as a tackler. Seahawks take Garrett Williams. Solid size, solid athlete. He played a whole lot of zone coverage at Syracuse, so I don't hate this fit whatsoever. I do think they might look for someone with more, size and arm length, where Williams is good in that realm. They like their pterodactyls, man. They like these dudes who are like 6'2" plus and have freakishly long arm lengths. But don't hate them adding corner, and there's a lot of upside there with Williams. And I wonder what this season could have looked like if he did not get hurt against Notre Dame. Foskey to the Dolphins. I do think Miami could use maybe one more edge. But that being said, you sign or make the trade for Bradley Chubb, and we really got to see Jalen Phillips pick it up at the end of last year, which was huge because he was my edge one, and I was super excited about him. And he kept disappointing for the first year and a half of his career, but then last year really picked it up. So you could use that 3rd edge rusher, and I don't hate it whatsoever. But that being said, this also could be an offensive tackle because I think that right tackle spot's kind of sticking out like a sore thumb. Chargers take Devon Achane. Interesting. This could be your Austin Eckler replacement. Those two also could be in the same committee for year one. Get the home run threat of Achane. I also think he's a solid receiver. So it kind of does make sense as an Eckler replacement, but maybe a little bit more explosive. So don't hate it whatsoever. I think 85 is actually a pretty good spot for Achane. I think middle of the 3rd is a spot where, 4-3-2, it's only going to last on the board for so long. Ravens to take Tyler Scott. So yeah, this is just Nelson Aguilar, but you get 4 years of control. And honestly, with how up and down Aguilar is, not only as a player, but just specifically his hands, it feels like some years doesn't have drop issues. Like that first year with the Raiders where it was like, man, I thought Aguilar had drop issues. Like, where'd all that go? And then it kind of comes back once he gets to New England and starts getting some opportunities there. So he's doing consistent. And I like Scott. He's new to the wide receiver position, but doesn't really show that on tape. So yeah, I would love to see them get that over the top burner threat. They're going to be a run heavy team, assuming Lamar Jackson's there. Got to have that counter, and Tyler Scott definitely could be that counter. The Vikings then take Kobe Woolen. Yeah, solid D tackle and a run stopper, and the Vikings desperately need some interior defensive line help. Unless you think Kyrus Tonga is going to take that step forward, which I liked him coming out of BYU, But, he's a 6th-rounder for a reason. Obviously, the league wasn't as high on him. So, yeah, trying to find an upgrade there and someone who could just eat blocks, sure up that run defense, I think goes a long way for the Vikings defense. Jags then take Zach Harrison. Yeah, a year after they draft 6'5", 275, twitched-up athlete Trayvon Walker, they kind of get the poor man version of that of, 6'5.5", 275 pounds Zach Harrison, who has almost every athletic trait you want except for Ben. That's the one area where he's lacking. But you could have him be the power rusher, Josh Allen be the speed bend guy, and then Trayvon Walker is inside-out versatility, so you could just move him inside to play like 3-4 end in your base. Or straight up just have him rush from the inside once you get into the 3rd and long situation. So don't hate that whatsoever. You lose Arden Key. Who's that 3rd pass rusher? I think Harrison gives you someone who could step into that role. Giants take Tank Dell. I'd kind of forgotten Tank Dell's still on the board here. Yeah, small, and that might not be for everybody. This is already a wide receiver room that is kind of lighter built, but inside-out flexibility. So whether he's playing outside or in the slot, can be that guy, but a really sharp route runner, and I think with long enough wingspan plus his release set, I don't really worry about him getting jammed to the line of scrimmage all that often, and it's just that big play over the top threat that you're hoping Darius Slayton could be, and you were hoping some of the other guys, Paris Campbell maybe could be this offseason, and you're just taking multiple swings to the bat to find that guy. I think Tank Dell is probably the guy I feel the most confident about out of those 3. Cowboys then take Kendre Miller. This guy is as explosive as it gets, hits the hole, and is, I don't want to say gone because he's not taking it to the house every time, but man, when he hits the hole, sees the hole, it's explosive, and it's a quick burst through the wherever the gap is, and kind of an underrated player just because maybe TCU a little overlooked there, but him plus Keaton Mitchell from ECU I feel like are going to be some really valuable running backs. Now I don't think Miller goes this high. I think there's some other running backs I like more, but because of that, Miller plus Keaton on the 4th, 5th round, I think they're going to present some really, really good values. And I think those 2 guys, if they do go in that range, could be this year's Tyler Algier. The Bills then take Antonio Johnson. It's a travesty that he's on the board at 91, but would love this. This is your Teron Johnson potential replacement or upgrade, while also giving you another safety to pair up with DeMar Hamlin or Christian Benford maybe long-term at that safety spot, because Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, they can't play forever. And I like the flexibility that Johnson can be used right now, but also become a long-term starter as well. Jair Brown to the Bengals. 10 picks for the last 2 years, so a playmaking safety. Could be that guy who crashes downhill and steps in that Von Bell role. So don't hate it whatsoever. I think he'll last until day 3, so I'm not crazy about the value, but don't hate the player and the landing spot. Panthers take Andre Carter II. If you've been around the channel for any length of time, it's Andre Carter, it's Zach Harrison here at 93, just about every selection for the Panthers. I just want to see them add somebody with some mass and some size to be that perfect complement on the other side of Brian Burns. So complementary skill sets there at the edge, I think, go a long way. Carter's going to have to gain weight and hold that weight, which he didn't have the opportunity to do at Army, but I think he can do at the NFL level. And he's got some sneaky bend to go with it. Eagles draft Blake Freeland. I think this is a kind of perfect Lane Johnson replacement. Have him sit behind Johnson for a year, and then let's just say Johnson hangs it up. I think Freeland by then going to be ready to go and step in that right tackle starting spot. Has a lot of those movement skills that Lane Johnson brings to the table. May not weigh as much as Johnson, but I don't think he's got a bad anchor either. So yeah, I like this a ton on paper. Chiefs take Tyler Steen. I'm kind of viewing Steen as a guard, and I kind of like him more at guard versus tackle, but nonetheless, some flexibility here isn't bad, and maybe he's playing tackle. Maybe they look at him as a potential Joe Thuney replacement, but I think the same could be then said about Darian Kennard, who they drafted in the 5th round last year. So one more option and one more guy competing there for a starting offensive line spot for Kansas City. Not a bad thing for them to add some depth to. Cardinals, Roschon Johnson. I really am intrigued by a backfield of Roschon Johnson and Kyler Murray. One, because then we're talking about like 5'10", 5'10" Kyler Murray versus like 6'1" Roschon Johnson, who looks even bigger when you watch him on film. But yeah, big power back who can kind of steer and evade defenders that way. Not much, in the way of jukes and spins and that type of elusiveness, but kind of set up defenders, make them take bad angles and then hit the hole or hit the angle to the outside and kind of have that breakaway speed. He's a speed power guy. And there's really only one team in the country that Roschon Johnson wasn't going to be a starter, and it was at Texas. So I think that speaks volumes about how good he is. And I wish we could have seen him at pretty much any other school and see what the numbers would have looked like. Commanders take Zach Kuntz, so high-end athlete, and they kind of have a situation where Kuntz wouldn't need to see the field right away. You still got Logan Thomas there, who's oft injured, but when he's healthy, still a fine player. And then you got Cole Turner from Nevada from 2 drafts ago, I think. Maybe it was last year, but still relatively recent. And I know there's a lot of excitement about Turner, maybe he being that guy who plays that Kelsey role in that Washington offense, but Zach Kuntz and that athleticism, he's finally been able to kind of bulk up and add more and more weight since leaving Penn State. That's a risk worth taking, in my opinion, especially here at 97. Washington's got a good roster for the most part. they're just going to be, their season's going to be dictated by how good Sam Howell / Jacoby Brissett play this upcoming year. So why not take a swing at the bat of this upside uber athletic tight end and see if he could emerge into that Travis Kelce role for Eric Bieniemy. Browns take Henry To'oTo'o. They can definitely get better at linebacker. To'oTo'o, I don't know. I'm just not a huge To'oTo'o guy. Lacks arm length. I think gets blocked out of plays. I mean, I think he can lay the boom. Like, I think he can be a hard hitter. But I think when offensive linemen get their hands on him, he's kind of neutralized. That's where, 6 foot 220 and 225, whatever he is, really comes into play, and you kind of feel it. But he is instinctive. He's got a good coverage feel, and does not hesitate when he sees, a ball carrier, right? Like, sometimes guys take a little too long to read the play. Like, To'oTo'o, again, his instincts kind of kick in, and he'll try to make a play. And he's got the ability to shoot gaps, kind of like Diane Henley. But same problem where he'll get blocked out of plays, and I think the arm length also comes into concern more for To'oTo'o than it does with Henley. Then here at pick 99, sorry, I thought we might have skipped one. Joey Fisher, tackle guard from Shepherd, so smaller school guy. But I think whether it's tackle or guard, the 49ers could find an upgrade. I don't think Aaron Banks is really a great fit for that zone blocking scheme, and they lose Mike McGlinchey. So whether, Fisher is playing guard or tackle, I think there's an upgrade to be had there across the San Francisco O-line. Travius Robinson, outside linebacker from Ole Miss. My brain is starting to lose itself. But yeah, like they say here, Chandler Jones can only play so long. He is old. So here at pick 100, a little bit of an upside plan, try to find that Chandler Jones replacement, which if they do find that replacement and it's anybody who can be better than Chandler Jones, it makes Max Crosby's life that much easier. Yaya Diaby to San Francisco. That would be really, really exciting because this dude is a unbelievable athlete. Now, he's only 253 pounds, and it kind of makes me think, well, you drafted Drake Jackson, who's this good athlete, bendy guy. I think you got him as a good value at late round 2 last year. Do you need Diaby? And my answer would be, well, you can never have too much, edge depth. And plus, Kerry Hyder's back on a 1-year deal. There's not a whole lot of long-term pieces already in place. And this is a team that prioritizes that depth. So the explosiveness, that Yaya Diaby plays with would be a really fun add to that defensive line. And man, if they're just using him as a DPR and a change of pace from like a Nick Bosa or a Kerry Hyder and a Drake Jackson, he could be really, really impactful in the small snaps that we get to see, the small amount of snaps that we get to see. And then the last pick, Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, now known by Trey Tomlinson to the 49ers. If you've been around the channel, I've mocked this 1,000 times over. This is your Jason Verrett body type. Maybe a little bit more scrappy, a little bit more penalty issues, but I think those can be cleaned up once he gets to the NFL level. And then he plays that Jimmy Ward role where he's kind of a safety nickel corner hybrid, really good tackler, good playing downfield. He's fearless too, which I think plays a role in that position on the defensive side, but also a really good coverage player. Moving from the outside to playing inside, I feel like you can trust him in whether it's man or zone coverage. But guys, that is going to do it for my reaction and grade the mock to Mel Kiper Jr. and Todd McShay's collaborative 3-round mock draft. All in all, I think it was really, really good. And there's a couple names late that we haven't really talked about a whole lot on the channel, but I don't rule out that they could go top 100. So considering it's a 3-round mock, and these guys don't always do that, and it's collaborative, I feel like they did a really good job, and they actually sniped a couple of fits for my upcoming mock draft. So I'll give these two a 92. I think, again, this was a really solid mock draft. But, guys, let me hear what you would grade this mock draft down below in the comment section. Whether you want to give it a letter grade of A, B, C, D, or F, or you want to give it a number grade like I did, let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. And, again, let me hear your thoughts on who your favorite team is and if you like the fits these two gave your squad. Also, while you're down there, definitely check out the links in the description to BetUS Today sponsor. We want to thank BetUS for sponsoring today's video. But that's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teach, and I am signing off.